Hello guys, my name is Anna and I'm a Ukrainian, and I have decided I will vlog daily from my country Ukraine since the start of the civil war with Russia. And in my daily videos I try to update you on the important real-life situations in my country Ukraine, and of course I'm always glad to answer your questions and to clarify some facts from our history, culture, background or whatever interests you. And today many people who are interested in the history of the USSR discuss the death of the last leader of the Soviet Union, Mikhail Gorbachev. Many of you started asking me in comments below the Soviet Myths Debunked videos whether I remember Gorbachev, and perhaps you will start counting my age, but I have to accept it, I guess. And yes, I do remember him, but of course very, very slightly. And I also remember that he has a very weird manner of communication. His voice was a little bit unusual. And one of my grandmas believed that he was marked by devil with this mark on his head. Of course, this does not sound serious, and he is a very controversial person. And perhaps my today's vlog I will dedicate to the attitudes that Ukrainians had towards Gorbachev, because to tell you the truth, he is not in active Ukrainian narrative within the last 30 years, and I cannot say that he is considered a figure that changed something dramatically or influenced something dramatically, or Ukrainians are very against him or are for him. Anyway, he became the general secretary of the Communist Party, and I'm not really strong in this hierarchy of the communist regime, but back in 1985, and from what I also understand, he had some Ukrainian origin because he was able to speak Ukrainian language, and also he loved his wife Raisa very much. This is a very popular thing that everybody knew and talked about. He loved her dearly, so perhaps these are two good things about him: that he knew how to speak Ukrainian and that he loved his wife so much. Also, another important fact about him is that he was a Nobel Prize winner. And this is a very controversial thing too. Why? Because he is the one responsible for really bloody fights in Vilnius in January 1991, when totally peaceful meetings and protests of Lithuanians were blocked by Soviet Union police and other special forces, and there were 14 or something victims, more than 1,000 wounded. And sometimes we think that that was the moment when Lithuanians actually fought for their independence and won it, contrary to Ukrainians who simply got it after the collapse of the Soviet Union. So to tell you the truth, this Nobel Prize, Peace Nobel Prize, is kind of controversial. From the other point of view, he was very active in the ending of the Afghanistan war, which was, of course, perhaps a good thing to do. And from what I understand, and when I look attentively at his figure and actually at the last years or decades of his life, he was more loved and respected in the West than in Russia. And this once again proves the vision of Russia as the USSR, the ancestor, the descendant actually of the USSR, and the dream of Russian people to recreate this empire, no matter under which name. So Gorbachev was blamed for the collapse of the USSR, and as a result treated very negatively in modern Russia and more respected in the West. I know that he lived there, he was invited to work in many universities, and so on. Also, he is very often associated with the words perestroika, rebuilding, that can be translated as, and glasnost, the word I cannot translate. Perestroika was focused on various economic reforms, making USSR closer to market economy and more realistic, a little bit far away from standard communism models. And glasnost was more focused on less censorship in media and elsewhere. And communists and proponents of the USSR, they blame Gorbachev for these reforms because they might have led to the collapse of the USSR. But of course, I think it is not true in this case, because the bad economic policy, years of suppression, many different states that actually had nothing in common, lack of, I don't know, development, these were the things that led to the collapse of the Soviet Union. And another thing that also Gorbachev was very active in his public speaking. He visited lots of universities. He was trying to influence modern Russia policy, but he failed. And in 1990, 1991, this end of the Soviet Union was actually very, very peaceful. And I think if like 50 years or 40 years before the collapse of the Soviet Union, people would have imagined the way it can happen, they definitely imagined the Third World War, the start of the transition from the Cold War into the Hot War, some, I don't know, attacks from the USA or other countries, but in reality, it all collapsed just like a house of cards. Why? Well, perhaps because the idea of communism, equality, I mean this like totally wrong equality, at the same time with rich political communist party leaders, it all failed very quickly. And today in Ukraine, we often say that we fight for the independence. And back in 1991, we simply got it without understanding of its price. Of course, for the last 300 years, Ukraine from time to time was fighting for independence, and Russia is our eternal enemy. But at the same time, back in 1990, 1991, it just happened. Independence just happened to Ukrainians. And of course, there was a huge patriotic wave, and many people started learning more Ukrainian, going deeper into traditions. Many new holidays were revived, religious life became more active, schools changed their programs. I don't know, there were lots of very positive tendencies that helped to fuel Ukrainian identity, but at the same time people still considered Russia a friend or a big brother. They wanted it, and many of our important vital systems were closely connected with Russia, starting from gas, electricity, and finishing with trade and lots of cultural connections. And back in 90s, the majority of magazines, newspapers, TV programs, they were broadcast in Russian, for example. Russian was still the language and the literature very widely taught at schools, not as foreign, but as something different. Like you have Ukrainian, you have foreign, and you have Russian. So the policy of colonization, the policy of Russification was not fought. And as a result, this awful monster of USSR with the Putin's regime started to revive, and resulted first in Chechnya wars, then in wars in Georgia, in Moldova, and in Ukraine. And if it is not stopped here, it will continue. So, to tell you the truth, in Ukraine now not many people discuss the death of Gorbachev. He's a controversial figure. From one point of view, responsible for many victims, because many people continue dying because of political repressions back in the 80s. Bloody events in Lithuania and Latvia, and many other things that he did. But at the same time, maybe the fall of the Soviet Union could have been more tragic and bloody for many other republics, and more victims could have happened. Anyway, Gorbachev was trying to direct some of his diplomatic things in the direction of West, making relations with the USA, for example, better. And for example, things like the fall of the Berlin Wall, I don't know, it all took place during his regime, or the official end of the Cold War, some mutual visits. All of that are positive demonstrations. So anyway, Gorbachev is the product of his time, and he was an important figure of that period, and of course he must be studied. But in Russia, he's treated in a very negative context. And in Ukraine, I think many people forgot about him. So today, it's mainly just the news, people reading, people condemning Soviet Union period, not equating it directly to Gorbachev. And that's it. Please let me know if you would like to know more about perestroika, for example, rebuilding, the policies that was launched by Gorbachev and later maybe was one of the reasons that led to the collapse of the Soviet Union. Would you like to hear about that in my new series, Soviet Myths Debunked? Also, I am so super excited about the growing numbers of my channel, and today we have 20,000 people. I cannot believe this. Once again, I'm very grateful to Jake Bro for the interview because he introduced me to so many new beautiful subscribers. And if you like my videos, do subscribe and help me share the information about my country, Ukraine, as this awful war with Russia continues, and we have to stop it and we have to win this war. Thank you for buying me coffees and becoming my patrons, as this supports my new project, Soviet Myths Debunked. If you haven't watched it yet, go and check. I have a separate video list for that. And also, I invite you, my longtime supporters and my new subscribers, to the live session that I'm planning to hold this Saturday at 9 p.m. Ukrainian time. And I have mentioned all the other time zones in a special community post on my channel. So do join me this Saturday. I will be glad to answer your questions. Thank you for your support, and thank you for your support of my country's Ukraine. We must win and we will win. Slava Ukraini!